From translation. NIV New International Version. This 146th day of the year, today we are reading passages Nehemiah chapter 7, verses 1 to 73 after the wall had been rebuilt, and I had set the doors in place. The gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites had been assigned their positions. I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah the commander of the citadel charge over Jerusalem. For he was a man of integrity, and feared God more than most men do. I said to them, "Let the gates of Jerusalem be shut at evening while the guards are on duty, and while the others are stationed with the Levites. Let the gates of Jerusalem be shut until the sun is hot. Then have them opened while the guards are on duty, and let the guards be stationed at each post." But the city was large and spacious, yet there were people living in it and not enough houses. Then my God put it into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return. This is the account of the things that I found written in that record. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles, whom Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon had taken captive to Babylon. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town, accompanied by Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Misperath, Bigvai, Nehum. Baana, the descendants of Parosh, 2172, of Shephatiah, 372, of Ara, 650, of Pahas-Moab, 2812, of Zatu, 845, of Bani, 628, of Babai, 621, of Asgad, 2322, of Adonikam, 666, of Bigvai, 2056, of Adin, 454, of Ater, that is Hezekiah, 98, of Bezai, 323, of Jorah, 112, the descendants of Hashem, 223, of Gibbar, 95, the men of Bethlehem, 123, of Netopha, 56, of Anathoth, 128, of Beit Asmaveth, 42, of Kiriath Jearim, Kephra and Beeroth, 743, of Ramah and Jebah, 621, of Michmash, 122, of Bethel and Ai, 223, of the other Nebo, 52, of the other Elam, 1,254, of Haram, 320, of Lod, Hadid and Ono, 725, of Jericho, 345, of Senah, 3630, the priests, the descendants of Jediah through the family of Jeshua, 973, the descendants of Immer, 1,052, the descendants of Pashhur, 1,247, the descendants of Haram, 1,017, the Levites, the descendants of Jeshua through Kadmiel, through the line of Hodaviah, 74, the singers, the descendants of Asaph, 148, the gatekeepers, the descendants of Shallum, the descendants of Ater, the descendants of Talmon, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Hagith, and the descendants of Shamdi, 138, the temple servants, the descendants of Ziha, the descendants of Hasapha, the descendants of Tabioth, the descendants of Keros, the descendants of Zia, the descendants of Padon, the descendants of Lebana, the descendants of Hagaba, the descendants of Shalmai, the descendants of Hanan, the descendants of Giddel, the descendants of Gahar, the descendants of Reiah, the descendants of Rezin, the descendants of Nekoda, the descendants of Gazam, the descendants of Uzzah, the descendants of Pesa, the descendants of Besai, the descendants of Munim, the descendants of Nephisim, the descendants of Bakbuk, the descendants of Hakapha, the descendants of Harha, the descendants of Baslith, the descendants of Mehida, the descendants of Harsha, the descendants of Barkos, the descendants of Sisera, the descendants of Tema, the descendants of Neziah, the descendants of Hatipha, the descendants of Solomon's servants, the descendants of Sotai, the descendants of Hassaphreth, the descendants of Peruda, the descendants of Jala, the descendants of Darkon, the descendants of Giddel, the descendants of Shephatiah, the descendants of Hattil, the descendants of Pochereth Hazzebaim, and the descendants of Armi. The descendants of the servants of Solomon, 392. The following came up from Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Kerub, Adon and Immer, but they could not show that their families were descended from Israel. The descendants of Deliah, the descendants of Tobiah, the descendants of Nekoda, 652. From among the descendants of the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, the descendants of Hakkoz, the descendants of Barzillai, who had married a daughter of Barzillai the Gileadite and was called by that name. These looked for their family records, but they could not find them, and so were considered unclean and excluded from the priesthood. The governor ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there should be a priest to consult the Urim and Thummim. The whole company together was 42,360, besides their 7,337 male and female servants. And they had 245 male and female singers. They had 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 67 donkeys. When the 7th month came, the Israelites were in their towns. On the first day of the 7th month, the people gathered as one man in the square before the water gate. They told Ezra the scribe to bring out the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded for Israel. So on the first day of the 7th month, Ezra the priest brought the law before the assembly, which was made up of men and women, and all who were able to understand. He read it aloud from daybreak till noon as he faced the square, before the water gate in the presence of the men, women and others who could understand, and all the people listened attentively to the book of the law. Ezra the priest, standing on the high wooden platform built for the occasion, opened the book. All the people could see him because he was standing above them. And as he opened it, all the people stood up. He read from it before the square, from early morning until midday, in the presence of the men and women and others who could understand, and all the people were attentive to the book being read.